12 life-changing storylines. Hollyoaks led the way with before any other soap. The news that Hollyoaks is tackling the underrepresented and harrowing issue of sibling child abuse has dropped jaws, it's fair to say. But from a soap that is currently covering huge stories around a child's gender identity and a campaign of conversion therapy, we shouldn't be surprised. In fact, more than any other soap, Hollyoaks has always led the way, daring to grab storylines that other shows wouldn't have touched. Soaps are a great platform to create discussion on issues that affect everyone across the UK. And each year, the UK's serial dramas go all out in researching and portraying topical and often hard-hitting arcs that 6-episode dramas don't have the time to fully see through. Decades into the genre, over half a century for Coronation Street and The Archers, it's harder and harder to make the bold claim that this has never done in a UK soap before. From a male rape storyline that grabbed every headline, going and shocked a nation, to the full-on exploration of the worst possible consequences in self-harm, eating disorders, and spiking. Here are just 12 occasions when Hollyoaks went for it and broke some ground. Sibling child abuse. In the gripping world of television drama, a controversial storyline has emerged, one that delves into the dark and rarely discussed topic of sibling sexual abuse. The central characters, JJ and Frankie, share a painful secret from their past. During their early teens, JJ subjected his sister, Frankie, to unimaginable trauma, leaving scars that continue to haunt her. Frankie's recent behavior, including a false allegation against another character named Jack, is rooted in the pain she endured during her childhood. As the story unfolds, we witness the impact on the parents, who are still unaware of the ordeal their children faced. Hollyoaks, known for pushing boundaries, tackles this sensitive issue head-on. The performances by newcomers Isabel Smith and Ryan Mulvey are nothing short of breathtaking. By shedding light on this rarely discussed form of abuse, the show aims to spark conversations and raise awareness among its multi-generational audience. As viewers, we're reminded that some stories need to be told truthfully and passionately, even if they are uncomfortable. Hollyoaks continues to break new ground, ensuring that important conversations resonate for years to come. Note, this storyline is fictional, but it sheds light on a real-world issue that deserves attention and recognition. Gender identity. Recently, the show has won acclaim for the portrayal of Rose's gender identity journey. Diane and Tony were left reeling following his revelation that he is a boy. He has been struggling with his identity and confided in newcomer Kitty, who proved incredibly supportive, encouraging him to open up to his parents about how he's been feeling. Rose took the barmaid's advice, telling Diane that he had something he wanted to tell her. When Diane found herself out of her depth, and Tony refused to take him seriously, Rose felt isolated and alone, with Kitty proving to be the friend he needed. Kitty reluctantly agreed to have a word with Tony and Diane, but Tony wasted little time in berating her, claiming this is all her fault. The reactions to Rose's journey from her parents are common, and sad scenes showed the youngster being overwhelmed and struggling with how to deal with this moving forwards. There seems to be potential progress from Diane, but Tony remains problematic in his approach. The age of Rose is a key factor in the story and its originality, with no other soap exploring transgender journeys with a child, at least on screen. Rose isn't the first Hollyoaks character to explore their gender identity. Way back in 2010, Jason Costello was central to soap's first ever gender dysmorphia storyline. When the character was announced, 2 pictures were released showing actress Victoria Atkin dressed as Jasmine and true male self, Jason. Conversion therapy ordeal. An ongoing storyline continues to shine a light on the horrendous practice of conversion therapy. Character Carter, ashamed and unable to confront his own sexuality, targeted John Paul and gaslit him, urging him to a support group, which then turned out to be an attempt to change his sexuality. It led to despairing times for John Paul, who was hit hard with the confusion and coercive nature of the behavior. More recently, things took a darker turn when teen Lucas, who recently realized he is gay, was lured into the situation, throwing the youngster into such a confused spiral that he began to self-harm. Conversion therapy. which horrifyingly still remains legal in the UK, attempts to change a person's sexuality or gender identity, effectively by encouraging them to suppress it. The storyline has a long way to go, with things set to get worse with the introduction of an even more sinister, homophobic abuser. Far-right extremism, a person who has been through a lot and has his fair share of rejection, vulnerable Steve was identified as a perfect target by a far-right group who set about recruiting him. It would be a story that would later be explored with Coronation Street's Max and EastEnders' Aaron, but this arc from Hollyoaks was the first time a mainstream soap had delved into it. The fact that it was a long-term and very prominent character added to the depth of the journey viewers were taken on over the course of more than a year. It effectively showed the subtle beginnings of grooming, with planting of seeds that Steve could initially relate to. As time went on, their vile views spilled into Stay, and he began to take on the attitudes, even lashing out at his neighbours, the Malik family. Things later became violent when an explosion from a package led Stay to realise how far things had gone, but the story would then look at how Stay remained trapped by the evil thugs, and, later still, the long journey to being accepted back into the community. Anorexia, death-eating disorders, were seldom touched upon in TV drama. When Hannah's storyline, which won huge attention and acclaim, including a Best Actress award for Emma Rigby, began in the mid-2000s. Treating the story with respect, Hannah would be shown struggling with the illness for several years, avoiding the trope that things like this go away in months. Initially, Hannah suffered with bulimia, regularly purging, but after meeting model Melissa, this turned into anorexia, which nearly killed Hannah. In a soap first, a character died from the condition, with Melissa eventually passing away as a consequence of the damage done to her body. Hollyoaks has since looked at eating disorders again, in the characters of Cleo and Imran. Self-harm's tragic end. In a very memorable and heartbreaking story, struggling student Lily began to self-harm as an attempt at a coping mechanism. It was triggered after she had body issues, when she was scarred and further exacerbated when she was cheated on. Bullying then followed, and humiliating pictures of her were sent round school, leaving her devastated. She would then get things under control, but suffered a relapse a year later in the fallout from her affair with Romeo. Eventually spending time in a mental health hospital, Lily came home, seemingly stopping her cutting. But as she pledged to start a new life with Romeo, her dreams were dashed tragically when sepsis from a recent wound killed her. It would highlight the very real dangers of self-harm, and was the first time a story like this ended in soap with a character losing their life. But the topic itself was explored much earlier in the show's tenure, with Lisa Hunter being seen trying to cope using it as an outlet all the way back in 2001. Her ordeal was also triggered by bullying. Spiking causes victim to die. In some of the show's earliest ever episodes, Hollyoaks was ahead of its time even then, showing a victim of spiking die. Inspired by the real-life tragic death of student Leah Betts, who died after taking an ecstasy tablet on her 18th birthday, character Natasha's story saw her spiked in the pub. Suffering a terrible fate, Hollyoaks' plot ran in 1995 and shone a light onto the horrific consequences of the vile act: male rape and footballer abuse. It's one of soap's most talked about episodes and storylines of all time, and it still remains at the forefront of viewers' minds to this day. Soaps have covered rape before and continue to look at the topic, including more recently highlighting marital rape and attacking the blurred lines of consent while drinking, hitting home. That rape is rape. But male sexual assault had not been touched upon, and, in an episode aired during later hours, Hollyoaks used the time slot to do the harrowing attack on Luca Justice in 2000. Gary Lucy won so much acclaim for his portrayal, and his ordeal has been revisited a number of times, including when he came face-to-face with his attacker decades later. Male rape would be explored later on in the show when John Paul was attacked by his teacher, and Luke's own son was groomed and abused by his football coach in another groundbreaking soap first. The topic of abuse in football and sport by people in a position of trust was unexplored territory in the genre. Ollie's long-running ordeal weaved in Luke's own ordeal from years gone by, and he eventually stood up to Buster, who it emerged had done this several times before. Skin bleaching. A storyline seen not long ago with Coronation Street's Asha The first time a soap looked into the topic of skin bleaching was in 2009, courtesy of Hollyoaks. After Anita was subjected to horrific racist abuse from Gaz, which led to a bullying campaign, she started bleaching her skin to look white. As part of the storyline, she wanted to be blonde and white like Teresa, and even posed as her online, showing the deep torment within her and how she was being treated. Actress Saira Choudhury said at the time that she was surprised by the story, adding, "I just felt really glad to be given the chance to do something like this. It was a big challenge. It's the deepest thing I've ever read. Legal same-sex marriage." As we see above, Hollyoaks covers topical storylines non-stop, and some of them are very difficult and emotive watches. That doesn't mean that groundbreaking stories can't be of an uplifting nature. And, soon after the law changed in 2014, John Paul and Stay became the first soap couple to be legally married. The couple wed in a church, and it had all of the elements of a soap wedding with chaos following. The content discussed in this video is fictional and based on storylines portrayed on the television show Hollyoaks. These story arcs address sensitive topics, including sibling child abuse. While the show aims to raise awareness and encourage discussion, it is essential to recognize that these events are purely fictional and do not reflect real-life situations. Viewer discretion is advised. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more exciting content. Hit that subscribe button too, and click the notification bell to stay updated with our latest uploads.